Three, two, one. Good evening, everyone. It's Saturday night. You know what that means. We're saying that still in honor of Mr. Brody Lee. This is night number 2 of 3 of the rope break weekend of the New Year's. And once again, welcome back, Jeremy. How you doing, man?
Oh, goodness gracious. After last night's conversation, yowie wowie, we got a
Yeah,
big
we
one tonight.
man.
Yeah, we got a big one tonight.
I I had a great time last night on the podcast. I think we talked about a lot of good stuff, and we had a lot of thank you guys, the people that have gone back and rewatched the show. I know it was a little long, the 2 hours, but thank you guys for going back and watching that replay. And then I'm also gonna try and put it on Apple and stuff like that here coming soon. Um, but like I was saying, yeah, we talked all kinds of topics. It's going to be available here on Twitch for 2 weeks. It's on YouTube. We'll post the link later during our break. Um, but we've got tonight. We're talking all the Fiend. We talked a little bit about it last night. Jeremy, do you want to just catch him up? What we talked a little bit last night.
Yeah, we lately talked about night two of WrestleMania. And we talked about the cinematic match between John Cena and the Fiend, and I expressed that the Fiend is just an episode all on his own,
Yeah.
and it's an episode all on his own, and you know it, I'm looking forward to talking about the topic and how he got to be the Fiend and what it's like now and what's the future for him after being burned alive.
Yeah, the crazy future. Like I didn't see any of this writing coming, especially with the burning alive. And I think I figured out how they did. I think you're kind of a theater guy, so I wanted to get your insight on that before we started. But I found out that there's like
Right.
that poly something gel that goes on the outside of these clothing that they can wear, and you won't feel the heat resistance. So I think that's what they were doing. Is that from your theater knowledge? Is that kind of what they probably went for?
Probably, well, initially when he was burned, in the back, in his back, yeah, there was some sort of protection over him,
Yeah.
probably a lot of Vaseline. That's why he never took off his jacket because it's fireproof. But as far as like being burned alive, uh, you know, face front, it was definitely a dummy, of course,
Yeah.
because you know, uh, if it was really someone on fire, I think there'll be a lot more motion than just staying still. So, yeah,
Yeah.
some pretty solid special effects there, and we'll talk, I think, a little more in depth towards the end about
Yeah.
the recent Firefly Funhouse Inferno match spectacle that they put on in the Thunderdome.
Yeah.
So, um,
But
but
yeah, we'll just get started with. So for me, it was what it was this. I know you wanted to start at the kind of go backwards at towards WrestleMania 30. You said you wanted to start the conversation there.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of have to lightly touch on how we got to get the Fiend.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Uh, you know, I mean, after WrestleMania 30, I mean, it's just the creative aspect of Bray Wyatt is pretty much in the trash can. It's down the garbage disposal. He's yesterday's news, it seemed like. You know what I mean? And just a very he had a very rough couple of years after WrestleMania 30. You know what I mean? He goes on, he has a good program, he goes on to the next year's WrestleMania, challenges The Undertaker. He basically carried that rivalry on his own. After that was done, you never really heard much from him again until probably Survivor Series of 2015. Then nothing really happened for him throughout 2016. You never really heard from him. Bray Wyatt didn't have much of a record-setting 2016. You know, and then 2017 he wins the championship inside the Elimination Chamber,
Right.
only to lose
That
it
was a
1 month
surprise.
later.
Yeah, a month later. But what
Yeah,
I like what they did there though, that they basically vacated the championship in the match. I really liked that because Cena, correct me if I'm wrong, Cena was the champion going
he
into it, and
was.
I liked that he was pinned in the match. I like that because that gave that element of surprise, and that gave me that kind of like, damn, Bray might get back on top here. Like, this might be Bray's opportunity, and I like that mystery of who was going to be the WWE champion walking out of there.
Right, and I had a feeling that was the direction of where it was going, was towards him anyway. And I thought probably, that was going to be um, his defining moment and a very good champion, probably putting him back in the conversation again. Only only a month later to lose it to Randy Orton at WrestleMania 33, and probably one of the most bizarre matches I've
Oh,
ever watched live
it
and
was
again.
it was awful, man, and it just didn't make sense. And as a championship match, and the whole, I understand they're still trying to play to the whole creepy gimmick because at that point the Wyatt family thing was just not, you know,
Well, it was dead in
yeah,
water at that point. To me, I thought it was just dead in water. So why are we going back to that?
yeah.
And I mean, it was an okay build up to that match, but it just didn't do him any favors. Okay, so now we're going a little bit forward to 2018.
Well, real quick, it's interesting
Well,
that
no,
you
2017, between Matt Hardy, because he went back, I think, to that. Correct me if I'm wrong. He went back to the broken character, the
Yep, he
Loken
did.
character.
But real quick, it's just to
Oh,
make a real quick point on what we were talking
yeah.
about with him going
Oh,
all the way back to WrestleMania 30. So I went back today and I watched the promo from the first SmackDown, I believe it was in the Performance Center. I went back and I watched that promo today
mm,
that he cut on John Cena, and the one he wasn't staring, he was
mm,
telling him that, that it must be only some of us could imagine what it would be like to be John Cena, and he was telling him, he was like, John Cena cares about John Cena and no one else. And he was like, and then he mentioned, he was like, 6 years ago at that WrestleMania, you broke me. And you didn't know what you did. You broke me. So then, I was going through a couple more of his promo videos, and he cut a promo on Seth Rollins during their
mm-hmm,
rivalries. Which, by the way, guys, we'll talk about all this stuff. And he
mm-hmm.
mentioned WrestleMania again, and he's like, and how that his character had changed. And then finally there was that second promo right before WrestleMania that he did at the Firefly Funhouse on John Cena. He said, he Rambling Rabbit made the joke starting saying like, "Oh, you mean that WrestleMania match where you started on a downward spiral in your professional and personal life and led to depression and stuff." And I was like, "Wow." Because that's really, if you think about it, like you were saying, his character just fell right off after that. Bray Wyatt wasn't
It, it,
anything.
it's that golden shovel, man, that John Cena had, and he probably still has today. You know what I mean? And he couldn't recover after that. Been a very hard, that 6 year period leading up to WrestleMania 36 was a very, well, leading up to 2019 really was a tough time for him, you know. But going back to him, even trying to tag with Matt Hardy, you know, did him no favors.
I think it was fun
So,
though at that time. I think they were really trying to just focus on fun. I think they didn't really know what to do with them. But I think
and now,
there still was
yeah,
that crowd engagement. People were still doing the lighters with their flashlights on their phones. They were still he still had the lantern. People were still playing into that side of his character, and I think he kind of tried to explore at least some of the fun aspect that he had.
he did, but I think with Bray Wyatt, I think he's just he can be, but I mean, he's really a dark character. But anyway, at any rate, leading to him just I forgot what his last match was before he turned into the Fiend.
Well,
Uh
they did the Lake of Reincarnation, and then
Reincarnation.
he teamed with, after that, Matt Hardy. Which, by the way, I don't know if you saw. There's a backstage segment. I love it. Jeff Hardy had just returned, and he's talking to
Yeah.
Matt Hardy, and he's telling him
Yeah.
congratulations on winning the championships, and he's like, "Oh, I win one every April." I liked that. That was funny. And then
Yeah.
Hardy, he sees Bray standing next to him because Matt goes, "Oh yeah, thanks to an all familiar friend," and Bray goes, "Brother Nero." we hadn't. I don't think we had heard the term Nero on WWE TV in a long time, and so he called
No,
him
and I was,
brother Nero, and he was telling him, that
yeah.
he couldn't. He loved the elite deletion. That whole thing, I loved that part of it. So I mean, just go back to my point. It was funny and it was fun a little bit at that point. But yeah, go back to what you were
Yeah,
saying.
yeah, I was actually there. That was New Orleans, actually. I was there for that segment live. So it was kind of funny, though, too. And to hear the crowd pop for Brother Nero. And that's the last time you ever hear Brother Nero
Right. And the
in
way brother
WWE.
Nero.
Yeah. Oh, Brother Nero. Oh, they used it. That's the same night that Kurt Angle said TNA is hiring. So that was kind of
Yeah,
funny,
that was
too.
funny. Yeah.
Uh, but but yeah, I mean, we're leading up now to kind of Bray just now finding his footing again. And we go back to 2019 to the first ever Firefly Funhouse.
What was the
And
last match that he had before the Fiend? I'm gonna look it up. I'm curious
I
now.
I I can't remember, and that's kind of where, and see, it was so
Lackluster.
memorable
Yeah.
that you just don't remember. Sorry, guys, we should have our notes
Hmm.
ready, right?
Well, I just
But
didn't think. I didn't think about that to think
yeah,
to before
because you
that.
have to look at you have to look at the transitions, in between what you were before and to what you are today. So I can't remember. It was sometime in 2018, but he took a long
Well,
hiatus.
he took that
I
long
will.
hiatus because him and JoJo got hitched. They got together, and they
Oh, that cute
were
little ring announcer, that little short little. She
the
looks like a Bratz doll to me.
the African American lady. I think she is. They
She
got
is. She was a ring announcer for Raw for the longest time.
Yeah, I liked
Yeah.
her. She was in the video games too. They got
Yeah, she
together
was.
in real life. Yeah, so they got together in real life and they got
Yeah.
together. And I think she got pregnant pretty quick afterwards. So he was gone for. So
Yeah.
honestly, even just trying to, like, I'm looking now, I can't even think about it, just even where to look because I think at that time, him and Matt had done something with the tag team. And then after the Royal Rumble, I know he was in the Royal Rumble. And then
Well, I'm
he wasn't
thinking.
there again.
Uh, I'm thinking it has to be somewhere between mid and late 2018.
Yeah.
But it wasn't. I don't think it was at the time because I think he was gone when Roman left. So it had been sometime in the early fall
Yeah.
that he was gone. But we'll take a guesstimate. If you guys can remember out there in TV land, I mean in podcast land, let us know so
Well,
we can
according
keep
to
that for record.
what I'm looking at here is, obviously they win the titles at WrestleMania 34. Then we go on to Andre the Giant's Memorial Battle Royale. Hardy wins that. They form the team. They win the Raw Tag Team Championship April 27th at the Greatest Royal Rumble, defeating Cesaro and Sheamus. And then they dropped the titles to the B team, the first pay-per-view title defense at Extreme Rules in July. And then
Wow.
July 23rd, they invoked their rematch clause against the B team, and they lost that match soon after. Hardy and him both took time off after that to disband the team.
What date was that?
That was in right after WrestleMania 34. So 34 was April 8th, 2018. So we're looking the
Right.
summer of 18. He disappears. They both disappear at that point. Hardy and Bray.
Right. Right.
So him and JoJo get
Right. So that's a
together.
year.
Yeah.
So that's a whole year.
So then we start
He
seeing the Firefly Funhouse videos come out in April of 19, just
Yes,
shortly after
right after
WrestleMania.
WrestleMania, right. That's when I started seeing it. And I thought that was the coolest thing I've seen in quite some time, the first ever, because you're like,
Well,
what is this?
they focused a lot, I remember, on Abby the Witch, Jeremy. They were focusing a lot on her. I remember the doll, Abby the Witch doll, for a long time. They kept playing the video of her, and I don't think it was a while
Hmm.
before they started coming up with the other toys. A part of me wanted
Right.
to think they were trying to think exactly what to do at that time.
Right, because it was very cryptic.
Yeah,
It was very cryptic because you saw Abby the witch. Uh,
which we already had
she
done,
was
and that character, and that was already a deadbeat
right,
horse, you know.
and we knew it was Bray, but it was kind of a slow simmer.
Yeah.
And I think probably a few months later or a month. How long?
I was a month after we had started seeing
Yeah,
Eldom. They talked about Huskus the pig, and that's when people put the connection that Huskus was Husky Harris.
Husky
Which, by
Harris.
the way, WWE, that's really that character was fucked up. Like, you want to talk doing some mental damage to Bray Wyatt? Like, you put him in NXT, you put him in the Nexus, and you fucking Husky Harris, just you make fun of him for his weight. Like, come on, that was the best you could do for his
Yeah.
character. I mean, but kudos to him though. He was strong. He was a strong dude back then. He's always been strong. He's always
Oh
been,
yeah.
very strong wrestler and a strong athlete. But
Oh
they
yeah.
mistreated him so badly. So I'm really glad that him and the Wyatt family got that second run in NXT.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
But yeah, so
And
a month later, he comes out in the Mister Rogers sweater, and he's like, "Hey guys, how you doing? Do you remember that the first Firefly Funhouse?"
it kind of caught me off guard a
Yeah,
bit because I'm like, you're giving us all these cryptic messages, but I liked it. Thinking about it now, and I always doing these podcasts are great. It's kind of genius because it's pulling you into the direction of, okay, here we go. We're getting this kind of, you know, we're getting this again, this dark Bray Wyatt, but now you're getting someone who's in a Mr. Rogers,
yeah,
in a Mr. Rogers costume. You have Abby the Witch as a puppet. You have Mercy the Buzzard. You have Ramblin' Rabbit, who's actually one of my favorites, and I hate that they kill him every time.
I think
Poor
yeah,
guy. But because I know the first T-shirt promos I remember looking on WWE Shop was Ramblin' Rabbit's like jam or something like that.
yeah.
It's like after they killed him off for the first time, I said, "Oh my God, they're promoting mutilation
Well,
here," but
I think
but
Do you think that they
uh,
didn't go fully into depth into the characters of the puppets on purpose? Do you think it was more of just kind of like a nod to Bray Wyatt's past, especially with Mercy the Buzzard being Louisiana, Bray Wyatt,
oh yes,
I think
those are.
they probably could have done a little bit more explaining that. I think they could have done a little stronger with that connection.
I disagree though.
Okay.
I disagree because if you really look at it, if you really zero in on it, Abby the Witch, Mercy the Buzzard, and Rambling Rabbit is, in a sense, and this is how I look at it, is Bray Wyatt's demons.
Yeah.
Ca- com- car uh, put together in little compartments. You know what I mean? You know in the puppets.
Because they are all
So
him. Yeah, they're all him. And
they are all him. Because remember, the Fiend freed him
Mhm.
mentally. You know what I mean?
So the
So
Mister
I'm thinking
Rogers Bray Wyatt is just the clean Bray Wyatt away from everything is what I was seeing at the time.
yes, he's free.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? His mental anxieties are put into the puppet. The Firefly Funhouse is Bray Wyatt's mind.
yeah, which I
His
love, by
anger,
the
his
way.
oh yeah, and his anger, his rage, his revenge is the Fiend. You know what I mean?
And
Everything that is horrible is in that character.
they really digging deep as well into mental health here as well.
It is.
And they're blurring the line between fact and fiction in Bray's real life with this, and he's exploring his own, deep, like you said, demons, exploring his own injustices, his own self insecurities, stuff that was
Hmm.
wrong to him in the past. And it was
Yeah.
interesting to see that play out on TV because you saw, like, first of all, the man is an incredible actor, but you
Oh yeah.
saw just such real emotion in all of these promos, especially he was leaning forward, the way that he immediately can change from the laughter to the serious face and go right back, he's so strong with it, and I loved that. And then we start seeing that immediately in the first Firefly Funhouses, and he takes a chainsaw and he literally is cutting the head off his own character. I think it was so
Yeah,
significant moment in Bray Wyatt's mental
that
and
yeah.
the character that he's playing on TV, because he's also saying that this Bray Wyatt that they had me portray, that I portrayed and probably didn't do the best job that they wanted me to, is no longer the Bray Wyatt that I am anymore.
Yeah, he killed him off.
Yeah.
He's really just killing off the past. And I agree with you. It probably some of the most genius television in quite some time.
Yeah.
What made Monday Night Raw a little more bearable to watch was building this guy. You know what I mean? And finally seeing the Fiend, I think after a few Firefly Firefly Funhouses was just incredible. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
because
I
they
just like, oh my
confused everyone, because he
God.
kept referring to he. He never, people were
Yeah.
like, "Is this a separate guy? Is he gonna wear a mask? What is he gonna do?" And an interesting fact that I found out about the mask, Jason Savini, of Friday the 13th, who I love Friday the 13th. I'm a huge fan of it,
Yeah.
actually. When I
Yeah.
first started streaming, that was one of the first games I first started streaming, was Friday the 13th. So I love Friday the 13th.
Yeah.
Jason Savini helped design that mask, and that's why it's so real and terrifying. And it's just like the smile and fear at the same time. Like it's literally the heal and the hurt. I think they did the best job I think they could have done with this mask that
Oh,
he debuted.
oh yes. And they put their good money to good use to that, to actually have an actual horror costume maker,
Yeah.
to actually create it, to and it's terrifying, you know what I mean? I was a little spooked for a second, when I first saw it. But the thing I love about what he did was with the eyes.
Yes, the
The
eyes.
eyes always tell the story. It tells That's why I love actors who act with their eyes. You know what I mean? You can tell someone's going through something, you can tell their joy, but you can really see real terror through someone's eyes. And I think the way he acts with his eyes is just it makes the mask even more menacing. It brings a more menacing feel to the character. You know what I mean? So, I just think overall the way they designed him, that they designed the mask, I believe it was probably very meticulous putting him together, you know, and not making it just some sort of just scary person. I mean, it's very terrifying.
And what an ode to him to be able to play that dual personality on TV, because it was never the same thing. It was never, the Fiend and Bray. The clear line was drawn to how different they are, and he did a really good job doing that, and it allowed him to explore that, like I said, that clean slate Bray Wyatt, and start coming up with things on his own, and start really playing into the emotion and how the crowd was reacting. And I think they did a good job choosing Finn as the first victim of the Fiend, as I say, because he debuted in July as the Fiend on Monday Night Raw and attacked him. That introduced the Mandible Claw.
Right, which is kind of an ode to mankind. Mick Foley, I think a lot of that uh, was taken into consideration too. I think he created with an ode to Mick Foley a bit, with the mankind character. So, and to give Mick Foley's blessing to use the mandible claw is pretty cool too.
And I think
But
he draws a lot from how Mick Foley was, because Mick Foley, he had so many characters and personalities, and then eventually when he was just Mick Foley, it was a combination of all of it. So I think that
mhm.
he is relaying back to the way that he did that, especially the from when he made the transition from man, like Cactus Jack, and then to mankind.
Yeah,
almost doing the same thing here at this time with Finn Balor.
he is.
And Finn,
Um,
on at that time, people were like, "Oh, Finn is going to fight back, and he's going to bring out the Demon King again to fight him. This is going to do this whole thing." I liked that they had Finn, almost, I hate to say it, but like look almost, girly to him. He was so like, I like that he was so scared and was portraying that, and that, that he was I think that he was genuinely, not 100% certain what he was going to get at SummerSlam. I think even as they were behind the scenes breaking it down to him, I think it was scary to see that the ominence.
Yeah, I mean, yeah,
I'd
the
be scared
ominous.
too, regardless if it's real or fake. I'd be scared. That's terrifying what they're playing out.
Well, absolutely. I mean, of course it's terrifying, but that first entrance scares you the most.
God, the first
You know what I
entrance. Yeah,
mean?
we talk about that. The music.
And I guess we can dive right into that. I
Yeah.
mean, that entrance was awesome, but you can't help to feel, ooh, I got a little, goosebump here. I'm a little terrified
Well, that was
because
one
now
of
his
the
original theme song is more heavy metal
it was
than
so
Code Orange
visually
is.
and auditory pleasing at the same time, and also scared the shit out of you. This was one of the best
Oh
entrances
yes.
I'd ever seen, and also on TV production wise, they did a really good job of showing the crowd the red lasers, the darkness, everything. So it was so dark. From watching it on TV, you
What?
could barely really see him walking. But what they
Well, what I
focused on
love.
was the lantern,
Oh
him
yeah.
holding the lantern of his own
Yeah.
head.
Yes. His own head, the character of his own dead, his old dead character. You know what I mean? Because you saw the dreadlocks. You know what I mean? The old dreadlocks. The Finn. I mean, not the Finn Balor. Excuse me. The Bray Wyatt of the past. He's carrying. But what's ominous is that he walks like a nightmare. You know what I mean? When that flashing light hits him. You know what I mean? It's not a spotlight that follows him, it's a flashing light. That flashing light, that's scary to me. It makes him seems like it makes him seem like an actual nightmare, that you're actually in a nightmare and he's walking towards you. He's a big boogeyman.
Well,
And I,
WWE
and I really
creative, they
like that.
really, I think at this point, they dove, I think, into the strongest horror that we've seen WWE put out. In terms
Yeah.
of its fear and horror with a character, and the production wise, I think this was some of the scariest stuff that they put on at this
Yeah.
time. Yeah.
I can
And
agree.
the leading up to it, them attacking all the Hall of Famers, Kurt Angle, putting them down, Jerry Lawler, putting Mick Foley down as well, like literally passing the mandible claw to Bray Wyatt on TV, like passing that to him,
Yeah.
you know. So that
uh,
gave the entrance more fear, because you're like, what are we getting right now? What are we gonna get right now?
well, you know, you're getting a demon, a literal demon. A demon in your dreams, a demon in real life.
When they brought
You
the
know,
lights up, I don't know how people didn't know how to react right away. Like they were like silent for a second and then started cheering and clapping, but then went back to that. God, what are we looking at? Like, I think so many people in that arena were so dumbfounded at what they had just witnessed, because that was a long walk to the ring. He took his time. He really milked that raw, uh, energy that was in the room. I wasn't there, but I can imagine that raw energy in the room. The people literally in awe of what they're seeing.
it's reminiscent of very much Kane and the Undertaker.
Hmm.
You know, because you look at Undertaker's debut, people's jaws were on the floor, not because of his height, but because of how menacing and cold he looked. You know what I mean? Look at this guy. Another one is Kane. You know what I mean? He's huge.
Yeah.
But not only that, is this the Undertaker's brother? Is this who we're talking about? You know what I mean? So it's very reminiscent of those two guys, I think. You have to walk slow, you have to walk menacing, you know, and you're playing an evil character, literally.
Yeah.
So I mean, you have to be slow, you have to be menacing in that respect. So
And and then they ring the bell, and for lack of better words, he just beat the living shit out of that poor Irishman.
He he railed him.
Yeah,
Yes, he did. No set of off, and they fought once before, but
yeah,
um, at a SummerSlam, I think it was 17, he threw Bray Wyatt off guard, but he beat the holy mustard out of him.
yeah.
He
And Finn was selling it really well because he knew that if Finn had to sell this, that he was the first person to show really how strong and invincible the Fiend was. So Finn basically just had to lay there and take it.
Yeah, and he knew
Yeah,
he knew that he had to sell it that way. I mean, it wouldn't make sense for him to have any offense against a guy like that
yeah.
unless he was the Demon King. But, a singular human, you know, you 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 can't beat him,
And
He's a mythical character,
they broke Finn Balor at in SummerSlam. They break him because that at that point you don't see Finn again until he comes back at NXT.
which
So
was
it's
that
like,
probably November,
yeah,
that
so they send him
November.
back to NXT at the end. He's a completely different Finn Balor. So the Fiend essentially took Balor, that Balor that we knew that came from NXT, the Universal Champion Finn Balor, that never that we never got before. The Fiend kind of took that away from him at SummerSlam.
In a sense, probably if we think of full circle storytelling, let's just say for the sake of argument, we have like a random match night in WWE, or or they want to put Finn Balor and the Fiend back together. It'll be funny if Bray Wyatt said, the Fiend healed you," because remember, Finn Balor didn't have much of a good run on the main roster.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
because like we said
After
last
that
night, he
injury,
was never the same after the injury. After he lost that title, he was just
right?
never the same.
Probably the Fiend healed him. You know
Yeah,
what I mean? Maybe he's like, I've healed you from your anxieties. That'll be a cool story.
yeah.
Eventually down the line, you know.
But that's the problem, and one of the main points I want to make tonight is that WWE fucked up with the long-term storytelling, and they fucked up with long-term storytelling, for the future as well. Like for like the short-term stories that they were telling, they dug themselves into a hole they didn't know that they were digging themselves in. But before we touch on that, when he first started with Seth Rollins, right after when they because everyone knew that they were going to push him to the Universal Championship. You just saw him
Yes,
destroy Finn Balor at SummerSlam. Everyone knew that he was going to be the next number one contender.
right, because there was nobody there
Yeah,
to, and here comes this guy who hasn't been on TV no more, you know, officially no more than what, 40 days
yeah.
if we leave it up to SummerSlam, and now he's the number one contender, and rightfully so.
And Rollins had that incredible summer and an awesome run when he got the title as well. Like that was some of the best Seth Rollins I had seen in a long time. So we are
Well,
getting,
let's look. Well, even before that, I think January, since
yeah,
when he won the Royal Rumble, he had the best run of his life.
yeah. That was some of the best Seth Rollins. He did so well. I mean, what he's doing now
Yeah.
is really well too. I think, and
Yes.
once again, the long term storytelling is a problem over there as well. But that's another topic. But
That's enough. Yeah.
we get Rollins, the best of Rollins at this point, in my opinion, that we see him as. He's the Universal Champion. He's connecting so well with the crowd at this point. In as a fan, they're seeing Rollins as more of the guy than anyone else that they had, even more
Hmm.
so than Roman, because Seth was connecting so well with the crowd, and he was doing really well with with every match that he had on with everyone he worked with. He was doing really really good job. So you get the best of Seth
Having
Rollins, you get the best of the Fiend now, the best of Bray Wyatt now, and they start that rivalry immediately. I think that was a really good thing that they did there.
I think it was after Clash of Champions, Seth retained his title. I forgot against who, and sorry I keep forgetting. But yeah, when those lights went out and that little wing, that little scary little sound that
Yeah,
comes through, and
because
all
that
of a
was right.
sudden you see,
He debuted at the or not debuted, but he came back again at Clash of Champions after Seth
yes,
Rollins' match.
right, exactly. And so you hear that wing, and then he's holding Seth Rollins' head. You
That
know what I
was
mean?
that was a scary
I'm
moment
like,
too. That was frightening because he's holding him. He's
right,
like, "This is your king. This is who you guys call as king." Because at this point,
right. This
Seth
is your
was king.
champion.
Seth was shit hot, and he knew it
Oh,
in
and
real
he put
life
that fire
and
out.
on TV. That motherfucker was shit hot. You know?
Oh yeah, he was what they call white hot. He
Yeah.
he he was he was on the he had Seth Rollins, and we can go through Seth Rollins again. Talking about Seth Rollins is an episode in all in itself, probably 2-3 volumes of Seth Rollins. But to take Seth Rollins out of the height of his powers and put a roadblock in the as the Fiend comes in as a roadblock in his title run, oh my God, that's brilliant to put the fire out of Seth Rollins, and literally he did. You know what I mean? Put that fire out. That's good. I liked it.
Yeah, it was brilliant writing. I thought it was really well done. And then so the next it was the next night after Night of Champions. Then I remember he introduced
Hmm.
himself as the Bray Wyatt to Seth Rollins. This is the first time he's
See you in
seeing
hell.
he's seeing Seth as Bray for the first time. That was really creepy. And they're at this point in the story they're alluding the storytelling, they're alluding to everything that and everyone who had done Bray Wyatt wrong in his eyes. Anyone that was doing something wrong to him, and
Right.
obviously we know they've had history before, and they had history with the Wyatt family, and honestly, the Shield and the
That's
Wyatt
true.
family was some of the best. That match, Shield versus Wyatt family, one of the greatest matches in
Oh,
the last decade.
very much
Incredible.
so. Very much so. One of the best tag team matches of the 2010s. Thinking of it now, awesome rivalry. You're right. We can even go into that
Yeah.
too.
But
That's an
so
episode.
he introduces himself as Bray Wyatt, and he tells him, "You're the Universal Champion, Seth Rollins." And I like that because
Yeah.
Rollins used to do that growl that I'm Seth Rollins. He used to really pull into that
Yeah.
Idaho, or I think he's from Iowa, that Iowa draw.
Iowa.
He really pulled into that. And if you look back at that footage, Bray Wyatt, when he does that, Seth looks down kind of like, "Oh fuck, this motherfucker just really got me," like like a little burn. He really burned him with that one a little bit.
Yeah.
And they
I,
Rambling Rabbit dressed as Seth Rollins, and they play out what's going to happen at Hell in a Cell. I liked how they introduced that Bray was the number one contender at that point, because
oh yeah.
they let him do his own thing. It was his eyes, as this was the first time we see the number one contendership in Bray Wyatt's own version of how he sees that he's the number one contender.
Oh yeah. I mean, it was inevitable. You know what I mean? I even saw that as an inevitability. It wasn't a matter of how, it was a matter of when.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So uh for him to do that and say, hey, look, here's your next challenger, Seth,
See you in hell. Yeah.
here I am. To stick that in your pipe and smoke it. So
Now, I can't
um
remember. Had they moved? Were they still on Monday Night Raw yet, or had Seth and Bray gone to SmackDown yet?
well, Seth didn't move to SmackDown till this year. He remained on Raw. So
They were
Bray
still that
moved.
whole time. They were still on Raw, but didn't Bray
They were
Wyatt,
still on.
when SmackDown re-debuted on Fox, didn't the Fiend and Bray Wyatt go to SmackDown? Was that
Yeah,
during
they
this
did.
time?
Yes,
Okay, so
yes,
Bray was on a separate show than Seth.
that's correct.
Okay,
That was before Hell in a Cell actually
yeah.
happened. I think so, because that was before Hell in a Cell because I was there for that night.
Oh wow, look
Um,
at you, man! You're always there
yeah,
for these moments.
I know. I think of it now. I'm like, I went to too many events, but yeah, because they hadn't. Hell in a Cell was actually. Hold on, we got to look at our calendars here. When was Hell in a Cell 2019?
Hell in a Cell. That was October, early October, the first week of October 2019.
So they hadn't met yet. Okay.
Yeah.
Because I know they were gonna meet at Crown Jewel just a few weeks after.
Yeah,
So
because we
Helen
can talk about Hell in a
that's
Cell.
right.
Hell in a Cell,
That's right.
God.
Yeah,
So
Hell in a Cell. Yeah.
the
Go
first of all,
ahead.
the pay-per-view overall, Hell in a Cell was not that good either. Leading up to the Universal Championship match, in my opinion, the whole thing that was going on beforehand wasn't good
Be-
at all.
Becky Lynch and Sasha Banks had a very good match at the
Yeah,
beginning.
this
Everything else
that's
was
what I'm
bullcrap.
saying. It was so good at the beginning, and then it was just like, all right, now TikTok. I remember, all right, we're waiting now until the Hell in a Cell
Yeah.
match. They bring
Hmm.
back the red cell though. That's really cool. And the
Yeah,
red
I don't
lights in
know
the
why people
arena.
are on the red cell. I like the red cell.
I liked it too, yeah. And they got the red lights in the arena that added more to the ambiance. It's October,
Ah,
I liked that
yes.
they did that. And it was Hell in a Cell that they were trying to really portray hell because, like we said earlier, this is really they're really exploring. They're allowing with the Fiend. It gives also the creative WWE creative the opportunity to explore more horror aspects. And like you said,
Yes.
there's only so much you can do to blur. We're already blurring that this isn't a sport, but there's only so much you can do also to install fear to also keep the sport aspect at the same time. So
That's why professional wrestling is so
yeah,
unique because you can flip flop between a sport, a sports show and what they call sports entertainment, but you can treat it as a television sitcom
yeah,
and you can treat it as a sporting event. So I think that's the unique nature of professional wrestling. In this case, this in this match, um, it's a bit ugh, going into it. I don't know the hype towards it, but the execution of the
yeah.
match.
The hype was so good that they delivered so well on the hype coming up to it. They got everyone so pumped for it because, like I said, we had the best Seth Rollins, we had the best of Bray Wyatt. The two of them were in the best shape. We knew they were going to put on a freaking good show, and the delivery just did not happen. That was so fucking heartbreaking. And after that point, that was never the Fiend had never come back from that after Hell in the Cell. It was
No,
so
not no.
heartbreaking because they started off all right, but it started to fall off a little boring, and you can hear at this point now. I think about 10, I'd say 7 to 10 minutes into the match, the crowd is they're losing the crowd at this point because it's poorly lit. There's not enough action happening in the ring. It's a lot of just Seth laying down and selling that, you know, but also the Fiend is getting attacked too, so they're showing a lot of the Fiend laying down and selling his injuries and whatnot. But they're starting to lose the crowd. And then Jeremy, what the fuck were they thinking? That they stop the what's supposed to be the worst match, the most violent extreme match of all time that has no disqualifications in it ever. I mean, we've seen it obviously in the past, like that one championship match. I forget what it was that they were in. It was, I think, Shane, and it was somebody for the United States Championship. They were in the steel cage match, and the third, it was about to be number 3, and Shane grabbed the rope and he stopped it. That wasn't supposed to happen, but it was the emotion of the match that he stopped that. So we know that mistakes were made, but this was a planned mistake. They planned for this to happen. How do you put a disqualification in a no disqualification match? You literally just said, okay, well, fuck every Hell in a Cell match that's ever happened now. Fuck every rule that we wrote.
Well, I mean,
I know what they were trying to do. They were trying to say that what the Fiend was doing was so violent that we had to stop, and that
well,
what Rollins was doing to him that was so violent that we had to stop Rollins from going too far.
well,
But this is not the
I mean,
environment
they're
to do that.
true, true, but however,
The rebuttal.
there. a lot of people keep calling it a disqualification. It was not a disqualification.
Yeah,
It
it was a
never was
stoppage,
written as a
referee stoppage.
disqualification. It's
Yeah.
a match stoppage. I can I can understand where people's emotions are when it comes down to that decision making. I wasn't too crazy about it either, but I'm thinking this is where they were going, is the referee showed too much compassion in the
Hmm.
match because he was going to hit him in the head with the toolbox.
Yeah.
You know what I
And with the
mean?
sledgehammer, the toolbox. Yeah.
Right. I think it was or something of that nature. Okay. It's going to crush someone's head.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So the safety of the athlete, which should not apply to a mythical creature, they use that psychology,
Yeah.
that the referee should have compassion because what he's doing is too far overboard.
And at the same time,
In
though, they're also introducing now that the Fiend is not invincible.
That is true because it does it that is true, and I was going to get to that actually. It tears this mythology away from him,
Hmm.
the mystique away from him, that he's an invincible character. That's true. But I just think that their psychology going into it just didn't, it doesn't gel. You know what I mean? It didn't gel. Now, if it was a Roman J. Uso match or a Roman Kevin Owens match, yeah, that makes more sense, right?
Yeah, if it was anyone other than, like you said, a
The,
mystical
but the
character.
Fiend is a monster.
Yeah.
He's not a human being. So I think what they did mistakenly, and probably might be shooting themselves in the foot now for it, is they're making him more of a human.
Yeah.
Human compassion, when it comes down to a character that is, you know, human compassion, when it comes down to a monster, is out the window. You're dealing with a different entity. That's the entertainment portion. So I think that's what WWE had a hard time disconnecting from. You know what I mean? But the Fiend's a human. No, he's not. He's another spirit of Bray Wyatt. He's like an it's not an alter ego. It's not an alter ego. If you look at the Fiend, he's a spirit.
Yeah.
You know what I
That's why
mean?
he's always referred
He's
to as him, as he.
right. He's a totally different person. He separates himself from Bray Wyatt. That's why I don't understand when they put him as a title, in the title it says the Fiend Bray Wyatt. No, it's just the Fiend. You know what I mean? It's a different entity away from, I mean, it is Bray Wyatt, but it's just a different entity
He
away,
even had his own
from him.
championship. The Fiend had his own title.
He did.
Yeah.
But anyway, let's finish up with this one. I think looking at it now, it's a bogus decision, and it did the Fiend no favors, and it just totally screwed him in the
Yeah,
long run.
and I think it screwed both of them because they, like I said, they immediately put the fire out on Seth Rollins, and they immediately lost all that hype that people had as the he was the guy. After this, you literally, the
Mhm.
boos were deafening on television. I
Oh,
can't imagine what they were like in real life at the actual arena, but they were deafening.
yeah.
You could hear you could barely hear the announcers talking and I think the announcers, they're, I don't, if you've ever seen their headsets, and I've seen them, pretty up close. They're big and they're loud, and they don't hear shit. They're hearing what they're
No.
hearing on television, but they heard the boos because you could hear them start to stumble over their words. They started to not, put in their script as much as they were before, because they were
Well,
so
they weren't expecting it.
yeah, they were so overwhelmingly taken over by, honestly, just disgust by these fans. They were literally disgusted at what they had just seen because
Well, you
they were
build
promised something, they
well, you
and
build someone, yeah,
go
sorry.
yeah, go ahead.
I was saying, you build someone to be a monster. You're building someone to be this monster, but yet you're weakening him. and I shun WWE creative for doing something like that. You know what I mean? It's you're totally diluting the purpose of the character. This character could have had a undefeated run for almost a year. I think
Yeah.
you could have had him undefeated for a long time and had some good stories. You know what I mean? You could have built it up like the streak. I can be the guy to beat the Fiend. But you didn't do that. You had him immediately defeated. That stops someone's run right in their track.
They forgot
So
they forgot how to tell a long-term story with the Fiend because they're not
they
focused. And I understand, at this time, they have a new network. Fox is wants SmackDown. They're trying to get SmackDown looking differently than Raw. And but the thing is, they're never focused. They don't understand that they had something so good, and they ruined it because they forgot how to tell a story long term. And it's been
oh yeah.
they had some of the best that they've ever had, and they haven't been focused probably since the start of the Ruthless Aggression era. Probably they haven't been that focused since then. And they buried a character that I thought that was going to be the next Undertaker had they done it correctly.
Had they done it correctly?
you
That's
know,
right.
but they ruined it. And then at the same time, they're thinking with their freaking pockets again because they got Crown Jewel right after Hell in a Cell, which
The
is
Saudi
just a
Arabia
show
show.
off show. It's just a glorified house show. All of them are. Even the ones that go to Australia, they're just a show off show for money. And every. I think at this time, Jeremy, I was also really disgusted with the WWE because the Saudi Arabians also had not allowed female performers. I think at this Crown Jewel, it was all male, and male everything in the stadium was male, and that to me, I didn't even watch it for that aspect alone. And that's just me and my personal opinions and my personal beliefs. I don't want to sway anyone here on the podcast, but I just wasn't impressed with it at all. And then they put together a match. Everyone knew that, okay, they just fucked up. They had to heal themselves from this fuck up. They knew they were going to give him the belt, but now this was lackluster. This wasn't, it wasn't as good. And he didn't win at home. He won at this show that wasn't, in honestly, truthfully, that's not ours. That shows doesn't, it's not for us.
It's yeah. The Saudi Arabia shows are just absolutely, like you said, glorified house shows with just a little glitter,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
A lot
Um,
of pop and circumstance
and
and fireworks.
pomp and circumstance. I love that word. I love that phrase. Yeah, a lot of pomp and circumstance, a lot of BS, a lot of political. It was mainly for the money.
Yep.
The Saudis gave the WWE I think it's not even millions. I think it's billions of dollars over
They
10
made
years.
they made also millions off the T-shirt and merchandise sales alone, just to the Saudi Arabians
it's
themselves.
it's a nasty, if you really look into the details of the business, is very nastily corporately, it's WWE's financial interests rather than the fans' interests. And I remember, I know we're going a little bit off topic, but we can talk about those too in another episode. But when they went to the Greatest Royal Rumble in Jeddah, I said, what a bunch of political BS.
Yeah,
They're promoting that, oh, women are starting to drive, women are the driving force. Where's the women? Like you
yeah.
said,
There are no
you had this
women.
sold out stadium of 75,000 people, the first one, and there's not a single lady in sight. You just see fathers with their sons or teenage kids.
Yep.
I'm just like, what a bunch of political propaganda to just make a country. And I think that was the year, or it was the year before, that journalist got killed
Yeah,
in
they'd had.
Saudi
Yeah,
Arabia, that they execute. Like, how can you? That was actually the Crown Jewel pay-per-view of 2018. Okay, they were in Riyadh that year. They were
Riyadh.
in
Yep.
Riyadh that November 2018 before. Okay, I said you should have never went over there.
You should have
If
never
I
shook their hand. You should have never done deal with these guys.
You should have never. If I were Vince and I heard something like that, I would have been like, forget it. We are not going.
And they
I don't care
asked him
what.
for way too much. They asked him for way fucking too much because They wanted them to put on all these shows, and they wanted them to have the glorified stuff of WWE. And then it was like, okay, so it's Saudi Arabian Showtime. Let's get all the big stuff. Let's get Hulk Hogan here. Let's get DX back together. Let's get all this stuff together nothing that's not even making sense on television. Like, you're supposed to just ignore everything. So like I said, by the time we do get to the Seth Rollins Fiend match, he wins the belt. It's not the same. If he won the belt at Hell
It's
in a Cell, you wouldn't have had people leaving the stadium. Actually, they didn't even leave the stadium. First of all, they cut off the air, and fans stayed after for 15 minutes, letting WWE know how they felt. You wouldn't have had that. That would have been the opposite thing. They would have stayed after 15 minutes collecting the graffiti off the floor. I mean, the confetti off the floor to take it home for memorabilia because they just watched the Fiend win the championship. But instead, we had to see it on television at 2 o'clock in the afternoon on a Saturday.
on a Halloween.
Yeah.
Actually, it was a Halloween. I can remember that because it was 4 days for my sister's wedding, but I can remember just sitting there because I was at work and I turned it on. We were allowed to listen to our devices while we're working, and I just was like, oh, I am so appalled. So you knew you made a mistake, but yet again, you're gonna go off home. You're gonna go off home soil.
Yep.
You're gonna put the belt on him off of home soil. They're not even on remotely on the same brand anymore. So what weight does it hold? It's a lose-lose. Seth's fire's already out. The crowd already turned on him. Fiend's mystique is gone. You've already messed it up. You know what I mean? You've already messed it up. They have such bad damage control,
Yeah.
Austin. They have awful damage control. They think what they say right now, is going to, it's going to fix the problem. It doesn't. It hurts your stars long term. Again, we hit this snag in the road of long term storytelling. Because I felt Seth Rollins, his run wasn't remotely near over. I mean, he could have lost the Universal Championship, but he still would have been hot on his heels. You know what I mean? With the Fiend, I just feel like you've already screwed him enough already. So what's this title reign gonna do?
Yeah. And because, like you said, it was already screwed up. It was fucked up in that situation. And, but subsequently there was because of what happened there, we got some good stuff happening afterwards with the invasion angle. But I want to talk about that on another thing. But that whole thing with NXT's and that incredible Survivor Series, I want to do an episode on that. But
excellent.
I wanted to take just like a 5-10 minute break. Yeah, we'll just do 10 minutes. So it's 23:05 to 11:05 now. So we'll come back 11:15, and then we'll start talking about the Fiend taking the belt to SmackDown with the new SmackDown
Absolutely.
stuff. So yeah, give us a little bit, guys. We're going to take